This is the Sports Porch Philadelphia. Flyers, Eagles, Sixers, Phillies. With your hosts, the Grand Schwabini, Rube, and me, your technical director. Come on, Philly. Let's get down to a little bit of Philly love. The Sports Porch starts now. Yes, it does.
All right, it is another Victory Monday.
Yeah. You got to let me do the intro. Welcome to the Philadelphia Sports Porch, everybody. You can follow us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get
your freaking podcast.
That's right. Mark messed up my intro today, but that's okay. It's a good week in Philadelphia because the Eagles have won 10 in a row. But if you're watching us live, you're watching us on Facebook and on X and on YouTube right now. And of course, you can follow our podcast. Follow us on YouTube at Philadelphia Sports Porch. And I'm going to throw this comment in there right now. You can listen live on our internet radio station, Radio PGH. That is a streaming link. If you just want to listen to the show, we are live on Radio PGH right now. You can always find that at radiopgh.com. So what do we do here? Well, of course, we talk Philadelphia sports. We do it in pages because Mark, a while ago, sent me some show notes. There were many, many pages of these notes, and he writes terribly small. But yes, he does. It's amazing that anybody can read it, including him. So what we're going to be doing here is page 1, the Eagles win 10 in a row. Amazing.
10 in a row. First time in franchise history.
Page 2, 76ers. They're having a little bad luck, and it's continuing with
nothing new there.
The Flyers are playing above 500 right now.
Doing okay.
And the Phillies are silent.
Yeah.
All is silent on the Phillies.
Everybody's signing players except your Phillies.
Right. So let's go right to page 1, turning the page. The Eagles have now won 10 in a row with a 27-13 victory over the Steelers yesterday.
Would you call it a beatdown?
It's tough. I think I would call it. Actually, if you look, remember during the game we were texting.
Yeah,
it didn't look like a beatdown, but if you watch the line play, their offensive line versus the Birds' defensive line,
right,
it was a beatdown because the defensive line owned them. And no, Wilson didn't throw an interception. And they didn't get any strip sacks, but they contained them really well. It would have been interesting to see if George Pickens had played, but he didn't, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
They won. So I would say technically, it was a beatdown. I mean, Wilson only had 128 yards passing and one touchdown. And as far as rushing, their whole team rushed for 56 yards. I mean, let me put up the stats that you sent me earlier.
Yep.
We'll put them up on the screen here. 163 total yards for the Steelers.
Yeah, and by the way, I think I read that is their lowest amount of yards since like 2010 or 2011.
Right. Yeah, I think it is.
And that's even in those lean Kenny Pickett years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know. 10 first downs, 56 yards rushing, net 107 yards passing. They were 3 of 10 on third downs. They had that ridiculous Najee Harris third fumble, and the time of possession was heavily in favor of the Eagles.
What is it there? It's cut off a little bit. Is it like 30 to something?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't see it there, but I'll look at it real quick while we continue to talk.
And that's what it was. I mean, the Eagles actually had a 10.5 minute drive to run out the clock.
Yeah.
I mean, it was something like I think the Steelers had 11 plays in the second half.
Yeah, which is 20 minutes time of possession to 39 minutes for the Eagles.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, it technically it was a beatdown, but it was the first half when the Steelers were closing it out to kick that field goal to make it 17-13. That's when you thought, okay, maybe the second half they'll come out. But
it's a game at that point.
It was ball control. That's really how they won the game. I mean, with those long drives.
And that's a big part of football, man.
Absolutely.
Keeping the ball away from the other team.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who are watching us on X, Mark is continuing to monitor X. if you have some comments or want to throw something our way. If you have any comments on Facebook or YouTube, drop them. We can see them right away. And if you are watching on X, share this out with everybody. Let's bring more and more people to the Sports Porch Philadelphia.
Let's do that.
Or the Philadelphia Sports Porch. We haven't decided which way we're going to go with that, are we?
I don't know.
Do you like our intro with the newscaster and the attractive newscasters looking at each other? I think maybe
they look puzzled.
Yeah, like why are we on a sports show?
Right. Well, I think if I mean, I like the idea of it.
Yeah,
I think it would be better if we had some more Philly-based stuff, like us.
Yeah.
And, maybe a bunch of people in like Eagles gear.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get the AI thing to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
but it's good though.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's good for one sentence that I used. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so let's talk about let's just kind of go through positions and let's give grades.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Do that.
Let's start with Jalen Hurts.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I give him an A.
I give him an A as well. 25 of 32, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did he have a rushing touchdown?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. It's so hard when they score that much,
right?
That like I get mixed up in my head how many touchdowns he actually has. But I give him an A plus. He didn't turn the ball over.
Well, he did actually have one fumble.
He did, but they got it back, didn't they?
No, they
that's
lost.
Right.
They lost.
Was I watching the game? I was actually watching the game live.
TJ Watt got him once, but great player. Got to tip your hat to him.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of that, he was pretty flawless. I mean, he basically picked the Steelers secondary apart, and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith both went over 100 yards. I see we got Roop tuning in here.
Yeah, excellent.
Turning point of the game, Eagles took advantage of the Harris turnover. Steelers only get 3 off 2 bad turnovers. Eagles D dominant. Yeah,
let's talk about that first. In the beginning of the, I mean, obviously Jalen Hurts A plus. I give him even with that strip sack because Watt he's going to get his
right.
The surprising thing was that the Eagles and we talked about this last week. Both Rube brought it up. And we agreed the turnover battle would decide the game, be one of the deciders.
Right.
They lost the turnover battle.
Right.
And then I said, if they hold Saquon Barkley to under 100 yards, even if it's 99, the Steelers would win the game. And he only rushed for 65.
Right.
So I was wrong there.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the thing about the Eagles is everybody gets a little. Well, what happens is it's everybody pays attention to what's happening right this minute.
Right.
And really, I mean, the story of the season so far has been Saquon Barkley.
Yes.
And in order for the story of the season to be Saquon Barkley, it basically means the passing attack has taken a back seat.
Right.
And then so everybody tries to pick it apart. Like, is Jalen Hurts holding onto the ball too long? Right. There's some reason for it. And I think in this game, they just kind of showed that they have a lot of different ways that they can win a game.
Too many weapons.
A lot of weapons. They can win it passing. They can win it running. And the bottom line is that when you have a good defense, especially, when the Steelers had a couple short fields and we were able to get out of that with only 3 points.
Yeah.
I mean, that just... I think that kind of demoralized at least the Steelers for the moment.
Yeah.
They kind of came back after that. But at that point in time, that takes a lot of your steam out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is they can win in a multitude of ways.
Yeah. And they like I was saying last week, and I've been saying all year long, they have too many weapons. And, I guess Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown are still pretty close friends.
Right.
I think I've been watching a lot of Philly media on that, a lot of the TikTokers and the reels and all this stuff. And, they want to get views, of course. So they want to spin these controversies into something that everybody's going to go crazy over. And we don't like to do that here. I don't think, honestly, I don't think there was ever a problem
No.
I think that the game plans just dictated that Saquon was the hot hand,
right?
And they were able to work his game into their offensive playbook the right way,
right?
And they already know what Hurts and Brown and Smith can do,
right?
So this game, when it looked like the Steelers, who have a pretty stout run defense, they were stopping them. They game planned around it.
Right.
And those two guys got to eat, and that was a good game plan. I think if you're sitting in Pittsburgh, and obviously a lot of people know we do a Pittsburgh show as well, but if you're sitting in Pittsburgh, you're asking yourself, did the Eagles, this is why I don't think it was a complete beatdown. Did the Eagles beat us? Or did we lose that game because we should have turned one of those turnovers around into a touchdown? That would have dramatically changed the landscape. If you're in Pittsburgh, you're saying that to yourself.
Yeah.
Did they really beat us, or did we lose it? I would still fall, no matter what show, on the Eagles beat them. I mean, they beat them.
Well, I think you look to those numbers that we saw, like the 400 yards of offense to the 163.
Absolutely.
The time of possession.
Yeah.
Right. And I would also say this, it really wasn't any kind of there was a little bit of a feeling of, this might be a game when it was 17-13.
Right.
But outside of that moment in the game, a lot of it didn't feel like the Steelers were really in it.
No.
Like at first they were down 17-3.
Yeah.
And it felt like, is this going to be a blowout?
Right.
Then they came back, and then you were like, we might have a problem here. But then, Eagles come out, they get 3 points on the first drive. So then they're up 10. Then what happens is, you get the Najee fumble, and from there, it just all went downhill.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to and Steve chiming in.
Steve, who is a Steelers
fan. He's the Yinzer, the resident Yinzer. It was a beatdown, he says. Let's talk about that AJ Brown showing and whether or not these two guys are friends. Let's show a little clip.
Hurts firing one, caught. Who else? AJ Brown, touchdown.
I tell you, that passing game doesn't look off today. After you run the ball so much, this is just called a pop pass. You fake the run, you get everybody into the line of scrimmage, and then you pull the ball and throw the pop pass.
Yeah, I always what the hell is a pop pass?
You know what? I never heard pop pass until that moment.
Until Tom Brady said it. Yeah.
But I have to agree. Kind of, you know what though? On a side though, I actually think Tom Brady's pretty good.
He's not bad.
You know what he kind of is? He kind of gives you that same he gives you that kind of information that Romo gives you, but he's not nearly as annoying as Romo.
Right. Yeah, but you know what? I don't think his voice is loud.
But you don't want to like him, do you?
No. It's one of those things where I'm like, enough already.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you think about it, Tom Brady entered the scene in 2001. And I haven't lived a day in my life, I feel like, without a Tom Brady mention somewhere. I'm either watching TV and there's a friggin' commercial, or we're talking about it here. Anyway, so yeah, I never heard of a pop pass, but yeah, there you have it. I mean, that was a great play. Let's move on.
Well, and what they did after that touchdown, they did the kid and play dance.
Yeah.
Where they kicked the feet together.
Yeah.
And look, the bottom line is I don't think there's anything wrong with showing frustration.
No.
You know what I mean?
Not at all.
Basically what happened last week was AJ Brown was bummed out because we barely won the game. The passing attack as a whole was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And he wants to contribute to the team.
Right.
So I can understand him being upset. You know, and Jalen said, after the game last week, he's like, hey, he wants the ball and I get it. I mean, he wants to be a part of the win.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, what are you going to do? I mean, the bottom line is, like you say, the Eagles have too many weapons. Well, part of the issue with that, it's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
But the only bad thing about it is somebody's not going to be the hero every week.
That's right. That's right.
And let's face it, all these programs on TV, all they want to do is get you to watch. So, of course, it's got to be a controversy. AJ Brown said passing. Well, what's that about? He must be talking about Jalen Hurts because he's the only one who passes the ball.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's just ridiculous.
Well, and that's what it is. I mean, the thing about what he said is he was telling the truth.
Right. Right.
I mean, that's the thing. Rube, Jake is back. A+ for the number one most irreplaceable Eagles player. Elliott. Yeah. And give me Greg Olsen over both Romo and Brady. I agree, Rube. I
like Greg Olsen.
I like Greg Olsen. I liked Romo. I think everybody liked Romo his first year.
In the beginning.
Because he was like a kid with a candy bar.
Right.
Like, oh, look what I got.
Here we go.
Yeah. Now it's like he's almost unlistenable.
Yeah.
So let's move on to another highlight here. Of course, sticking with
Hurts, pressure, slings it. It is caught for the touchdown. Devontae Smith.
Well, that's what I would do too. I would find Pierre, who just came into the game. He's working there on motion, and they're a really tough pass off there.
Yeah, and of course, the Steelers have some injury issues after this game with Jackson. Is it Jackson, Dante Jackson, who's down, and then TJ Watt has that ankle issue. But it looks to me, and it's looked all year from a Steelers perspective, that they have trouble with those little slant plays. In covering them, and also Devonta Smith, he runs them really well.
Well, right.
That's his
signature
play.
It's who it's against, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if you flip the script and we have Van Jefferson running that pass, it's probably not a catch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably Minkah Fitzpatrick's in front of it, batting it down.
Yeah. I agree.
So really, those guys are two of the top receivers in the game. So, but yeah, the coaching was smart though, right?
Absolutely.
Because Pierre comes in, it's his first play. Let's attack right at him.
Yeah. Now, I did want to bring this up because, of course, paying attention to social media ever since the game, just to see what everybody's saying. If I have some information for Eagles fans out there, and this may or may not be news to you, Mark.
Okay.
But if you wonder where all your ticket money is going, all the money for merchandising, all of the money for the beer at the stadium,
I have not been wondering about it.
Well, I'm going to show you where it's going right now. It's going right there around Jalen Hurts' neck. What in God's name is that thing that he was wearing to the news conference? That was a necklace that I'm sure he was told, or I'm sure is, all diamonds.
I'm sure it is.
That's what $250 million in a contract. Is that what his contract was? $250? Yeah. That's what a $250 million contract gets you.
It does. But now on the positive side.
Yeah, right.
Jalen Hurts also contributes. He's basically bought air conditioning for every city school in Philadelphia that doesn't have it.
I'm not looking for anything. I'm not indicting him. I'm just saying, like,
that's his ice, man. Yeah. He looks good. He looks good.
That was the first thing I saw. I didn't even pay attention to the video. I was like, what in God's name is around his neck? Like, would he have been wearing that 3 years ago? No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So, so Hurts in the passing game and A+. Do we want to go down to Saquon Barkley in the running game? They rushed for a total of 131 yards, so a good day. They did have one rushing TD, which is Hurts's. Saquon was 19 rushes for 65 yards. 22 of those came on one rush. So how would you grade Saquon? And then we have to talk about his health.
I would give him a B. Here's the thing. I think that, look, the Steelers' game plan was to stop Saquon Barkley, and they're one of the few defenses in the league that can do that if that's what they want to do, right?
Right.
Now, I don't know that it was entirely effective because it just opened up the passing game.
Right.
But they stopped him, so give him credit for that.
Right.
Now, at the same time, he got a little nicked up. Minkah Fitzpatrick put a nice hit on him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's been no talk today of any injury.
Yeah.
But he basically sat out the whole second quarter.
Yeah.
And then came in to finish out the game.
He was used sparingly, though.
He was used sparingly. So, right. and also, too, Gainwell was doing well.
Yeah.
So they figure you might as well kind of rest him if we're iffy on him. I mean, really what this game was to me for Barkley was this game was your typical Saquon Barkley game. He just didn't have that 150-yard touchdown.
Yeah, he didn't.
If he did have the 150-yard touchdown, then it would have been 20 for 110.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But give the Steelers credit because they didn't let that happen.
Yeah. I would give him a B as well, purely for the fact that he drew a lot of attention. And they were really focused. I think the Steelers defensively were focused more on Saquon Barkley than anybody else. I think it's pretty obvious because their secondary could not handle the Smith and Brown. Hurts did have 15 rushes for 45 yards in that score. Gainwell 7 rushes.
Kenny G to the rescue. Well, the thing that Kenny G did was he made a couple critical third down conversions.
Yes,
he did. He made the one where he spun out. Who was that bit on the spin? Was that Queen? Maybe.
No, it was. I think it was one of the corners.
And then he made the play where it was poor tackling by JPJ and I think Queen too, where he just went right between them.
Yeah.
So I mean, he made some things happen. He's a good third down back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, like to be honest, I think he's very comparable to Jaylen Warren on the Steelers.
Right.
You know, I think Jaylen Warren might actually be a little bit better than Kenny Gainwell, but it's only because Jaylen Warren gets half the carries and Kenny G doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, but in other seasons when he has had half the carries, you know, that's kind of the output it gives you.
Yeah, and for having to come in with Barkley being hurt, or I don't want to use that term, but he looked like he might have been hurt.
It looked like he was nicked up.
Yeah, so having to come in and spell him there with those critical plays, he gets an A.
Yep.
Yeah, he gets an A. Absolutely. Let's move on to receiving. A.J. Brown, 8 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. His long was 21. I mean, I think it's pretty simple here. He gets an A.
I think he and Devontae both get A's.
I think they both get A's. Devontae, 11 catches for 109 yards and a score. His long was 22. I mean, almost identical stats.
Right.
Which is what you have on either side of the field. Guys with identical skills, for the most part. Let's talk about the defense.
Defense was very good. I mean, look, another game, gave up 13 points. Now, I will say, part of that is that the Eagles offense is so darn good and keeps the ball. So they're not on the field a lot. Yeah. But I'll tell you what, when they are on the field, they're pretty damn good. Yeah. I mean, I think the Steelers might have started out the whole first quarter with like 3 and outs.
Yeah, I think they did. So let's take a look at one of those defensive highlights.
Here's Wilson. Pressure coming. He's in trouble, and he is sacked. Nolan Smith around the edge with a down.
I'll tell you that they're during the game. I said to you guys, it's their defense. Their line is on fire. You know, I mean, they were really pushing. The Steelers' offensive line, from my perspective, the Steelers' offensive line played well because they've got a few rookies and second-year players in there. And they're still kind of putting that together. Yeah. And the fact that Wilson didn't get crushed means they played okay against a really, really good defense. But I'll tell you what, 161 yards or 163 total yards of offense. I mean, I just say the whole defense gets an A+.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now Steve chimes in here and he says, it would have been nice to see if Pickens was in. Wish Pickens was in to know for sure about Eagles secondary is for real. I mean, I think their secondary is for real anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, would it have changed the game?
I think it would have changed the game.
I mean, let's basically say for 10 weeks, I don't think they've given up a touchdown.
Yeah.
So, you know, so I mean, so it's been pretty good. I mean, look, every corner's going to get beat here and there. Yep. I mean, and if Pickens played, might he have got one long one? Sure, he might have.
Yep.
But I think the overall feeling on it is that, this was another game where you never heard Quinyon Mitchell's name.
Nope.
Nobody throws his way. So obviously the coaches are seeing something in the film that they don't even want to throw his way.
Right.
Everything gets thrown the way of Slay. he's been playing pretty good ball. I mean, he's pretty much on top of things, batting balls down. And Cooper DeJean, he had a tough week the week before against Adam Thielen, but that was like the worst game he played, and he might have only given up like 50 yards to Adam Thielen, and he's everywhere making plays too. So, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship, both above average safeties, I'd say. So yeah, they're in good shape. I mean, and good linebackers, good line. It's a really the thing that is key about the defense, which is so much different than what I saw last year, is whenever I'm watching them, I'm always looking and I'm seeing like Jalen Carter is like moving his hand back like this.
Yeah.
Chauncey Gardner's going like this. Everybody knows where they're supposed to be.
Right.
And that's what Fangio, I think, has done so well.
Yep.
Is everybody is paying attention to what their gap is or what their assignment is. And there's rarely a blown coverage.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's something that in the beginning of the year, everybody was kind of questioning the D. And it's one of those things where you have to have patience when you bring in a new coordinator, even if they have the entire offseason to install their playbook. These guys, even if these guys have played together before, there's going to be different assignments. He's going to look at these defenses in every game differently than the previous guy. The important thing is you get them to buy in. If you get them to buy in, then you start to see the results. And I think we're seeing those results now. And the Eagles defense it keeps getting better and better. No, they didn't have George Pickens. For those who pay attention to our Pittsburgh show, I'm not the biggest George Pickens fan. Okay. I think the guy's got mad hands. I mean, he can catch anything in his vicinity. He can basically stick out his finger and the ball's going to stick to it. And he's got great footwork, but I'm not convinced that he is an AJ Brown. I'm not convinced that he's going to be, 95, 100 catches for 1,400 yards a year receiver. I just don't, I don't see that. So if he had been in the game, would that have changed things? Honestly, what I watched yesterday, not a whole lot. That's just my opinion.
I sort of liken him. He's a good, solid player.
Yeah.
He can make plays.
Right.
He's an 1,000-yard receiver.
Right.
But there is a big difference between him and an AJ Brown.
Yes.
Like AJ Brown just basically like looks at people and they fall over and he's wide open.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So Steve's got to jump in here and say they're good versus Van Jefferson and CA3. That's Calvin Austin III. Yeah. What about St. Brown and Jamison Williams? That's the real test. Of course. Rube says the O-line did a good job against a stout pass rush, right? Landon Dickerson extended his streak of blue tent visits. Hope he's okay and will hold up. That was one concern that I had. I mean, we're getting late in the season now, and this is kind of the time where you start to worry that just the regular wear and tear can lead to a small injury that turns into something bigger.
Right.
And for the Eagles right now, it's important that offensive line stay intact.
Right.
Because now you're going to be going into the playoffs when things really matter. Of course, they have 3 weeks left, but that's going to be a concern going down the line. And same on the other side of the ball. I think the offensive line did a pretty good job. You knew TJ Watt was going to to get his.
Yeah.
I mean, he almost always does.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing too, really is, it's nothing that we really ever talk about.
Right.
But the Eagles actually do have 2 pretty good replacements for the offensive line too.
Yeah.
Like Fred Johnson comes in for Lane Johnson and, we didn't hear his name.
Nope.
Tyler Steen comes in, he did get 1 penalty. But usually I always find like when the backup offensive lineman comes in, it's like they look for him to call a holding penalty on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You could call it on every play.
Right. But he held up his end, so, they've got some depth there, but of course you want the big guys ready for when it counts.
Yeah.
And, I guess that's sort of the next thing that we're thinking about here now with the Lions losing. So the Eagles and the Lions are 12-2. The Lions have the tiebreaker right now because they have an AFC loss, and both of the Eagles' losses are NFC.
Right.
But bottom line is it's basically tied with 3 games left.
Right.
Right. So if you win 3 and they win 2, or, some combination like that, then you could get the number 1 seed. And I will tell you what, I think it's important to get the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Number 1, I think Philly is a hard place to play.
Yep.
And number 2, honestly, I just think having one less game is big.
Yeah.
Especially think of it this way, right? You could, let's say you're the 2 seed. You might have to play Green Bay.
Right.
That's a tough game.
Yeah.
You want to play Green Bay after they've banged their whole team up for a week.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So I think it's important. The way I sort of look at it right now, it's one of those things where, I saw the Lions lost Montgomery for the season. So they finally lost somebody on offense.
Yeah.
Although Jahmyr Gibbs is pretty damn good.
He's pretty good. Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, geez, the Lions in the past 2 weeks have given up over 40 points twice.
Yeah, that's kind of shocking. But, when we talked about this earlier in the season, they had something like 10 players or more on injured reserve from defense. Right. Mm-hmm. Sooner or later, that's going to start to catch up with you, because it's not like when you're bringing in backups, even if they're playing above their skill grade, somebody else is going to get hurt. And the Lions may have peaked. I mean, they
may have. I mean, the way I sort of look at it is like if I'm measuring up the Lions and the Eagles, okay, I might say, okay, I'd be willing to concede that maybe the Lions' offense is better,
right?
Okay, as a whole,
I don't know about,
but I don't know, But that's the thing. But we're sitting here saying I don't know. Yeah. But the defense, it's so overwhelmingly in favor of the Eagles.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is, as good of an offense as they are, I mean, geez, if you just manage to keep them, under 30 points, you could probably win the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which usually you'd say you have to keep them under 20.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, okay, well, they're a great offense. Maybe they will get 28.
Yeah.
But if they get 28, you should probably win with the way their defense is.
Here's the thing. The way it's going right now, Minnesota's playing tonight, right?
Yeah, Minnesota's not out of it either.
Yeah, I mean they're what, 11-2, right?
Minnesota could get the number 1 seed.
Yeah, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold. Say it with me, Sam Darnold. There you go.
The crazy thing is, and believe it or not, in the NFC, because of the way they do the seeding, there is likely to be whoever finishes second in the NFC North, whether it be the Lions or the Vikings, is probably going to be like the 5 seed at like 14-3.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
That's insane.
Yeah. So I think the more important thing right now for the Eagles, now that the number 1 seed is in play,
Commanders
is you got to look at the Commanders and at 9-5, eking that game out over New Orleans,
and you know what? Here's the thing. It's so frustrating when you're, obviously as an Eagles fan, you're rooting for the Commanders to lose.
Right.
And then you give us this, you're going to go for 2 because you have nothing to play for.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Kick the field goal. Try to win it like a regular club.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, so here's the thing: you're going to Washington. They've secured a winning season. They've played well above expectations. I think Jaden Daniels has played a little bit above expectations because there were high expectations for him. So a little bit above them. They are the number 1 scoring offense in the NFC East. They've scored 396 points, about 30 points more than the Eagles. But their defense is second in the East. They've given up 315 points. The Eagles have only given up 247. I mean, I don't think there's a question here.
Right.
I just think this game is going to boil down to it's going to become again a classic NFC East rivalry. Mm-hmm. The Eagles are the better team, and if they can do the same thing they did to the Steelers, which is not turn the ball over and keep it for longer, then I think they win the game. I don't think it matters who gets the ball.
It's going to be a tough one,
right?
This is obviously their toughest game left on their schedule because they have the Cowboys at home or maybe the Cowboys on the road.
Yeah.
And then the Giants at home
on the road.
Oh, Giants on the road too. Okay.
Oh, no. My fault. They're at Washington, then they finish up with 2 at the link.
Oh, really? Dallas and the Giants at home.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to think that they should get through those games. This is the tough one. Look, I mean, forgetting, let's say they have to play the last game. They don't sit anybody. It's really hard to win 13 straight. I mean,
yeah.
It's really hard.
It's hard to win 9 straight, 10 straight. Now
Right.
You're going for 11 straight.
Right. It's really hard. I mean, you got to figure, there's got to be a stumble somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, and really, look, the Steelers, I mean, I know maybe Steelers fans are thinking the Ravens game is a much bigger game than the Eagles game. But, I mean, with the Eagles having the Steelers being clearly the best team that was left on their schedule, I feel like the Eagles saw it as a big game.
Right.
And so the next week, this could be your letdown game.
Yeah.
This could be. I mean, now the other thing too is that Jaden Daniels, I think, has had a really good year. And what happened to him was he got off to a flying start, and then the league caught up with him a little bit. They played some good teams, and they had a number of losses in a row. But I think what you probably saw this past week, and maybe what you'll see towards the end of the season, is him starting to figure some things out and kind of adjusting to the adjustments.
Right.
And playing some better ball down the way. I mean, I think the Commanders are going to be in the playoffs. I think they're going to get the 7th seed.
Right.
And so essentially, if they beat the Eagles, they're definitely going to make the playoffs. And if they don't, then they still have a chance to finish like 11-6.
Right. Which should get them in.
Which should get them in. Right. So I think this is a real tough one. I mean, there are certain things that happened that I don't know if they can happen twice. Like, for example, I mean, Quinyon Mitchell completely stifled Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin hasn't been stifled by anybody except him.
Right.
Is he going to do it twice?
I don't know. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's such a good player.
Yeah. Well, this game comes down to what I said earlier. Ball control.
This is where we may need the most irreplaceable Eagles player,
Jake Elliott,
to kick a good field goal.
Yeah. Well, at least he didn't miss any last game. That yesterday. There were 2 days. What's today? Monday, right? Yeah.
I still believe though. I still believe that the dumbest thing that they've done with Jake Elliott is take the kickoff duties away from him.
Right.
I just think that's stupid. Like first of all, Jake Elliott hits 1 million balls for touchbacks, just like the punter does. Why does the punter have to do it?
Yeah.
I mean, I just sort of feel like if you're not kicking the ball throughout the game and kind of staying warm, you make it so much harder for a kicker just to come out there like 2 times, without being involved in the game at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like that strategy. I think it's a dumb strategy.
Well, I don't know if that plays into it or not. I mean, every kicker goes through periods of time, just like a batter in baseball, where they're in a slump. And
it happens.
Their mechanics are off, and it's better that it happened to him this year during a couple wins in the middle of the season. Maybe he's been able to shake that off, because damn well down the stretch here, whether it's this week coming up or in the playoffs, there's going to be an important kick or two.
Right.
And you want him to make those.
Right.
So, I think this game really comes down to, if you look at it from the reverse side, how does Washington win this game? Well, if I'm in the Commanders, I want the ball in Jaden Daniels' hands as much as possible, because their defense is mediocre. It's had some good moments. It's played some decent games. But all in all, there's no real star on that side of the ball, and the Eagles' offensive line is pretty good. And the longer they hold on to the ball, the more apt they are going to score with the weapons that they have. So if I'm the Commanders, I want Daniels holding that ball. It's a time of possession. Clearly,
it is. I mean,
you can argue that at every game, I know, but in this instance, the longer they drive, they win 3-0. It doesn't matter. They win 3-0. I mean, keep the ball for 59 freaking minutes if you can. They're not going to be able to score. That's what it's going to come down to. And don't turn it over. because these games are always close. And then you go into playing Dallas and New York, and you're hoping that the Giants game is a game where the number one seed is not in play. Either they're definitely not going to get it, or it's already wrapped up.
Right.
I mean, if Detroit loses next week and they win this week, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of an evil thing if you think about it. If they have to play for the number one seed all the way to the end of the year, and then there's a chance they don't get it, that then there's no real rest for them. So
right.
This is I mean, as good as things look right now, it's a tough spot to be in. So you definitely want to win this game.
Yeah, I know. But
all right.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk some other stuff.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Quick.
You can follow the Sports Philadelphia podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio app, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts. You can also follow the Sports Porch on YouTube. We're live there right now. If you're watching, thank you very much, at Philadelphia Sports Porch. And you can listen to us live on Radio PGH when we are on the air. We're live right now all over the world on Facebook, YouTube, and X. Thanks for being here. Page 2, the 76ers. The bad luck continues. Have you mailed the season in now? Are we done? I mean, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. So, of course, Embiid finds a way to get another unusual injury,
right?
Like a sinus fracture, which is some sort of broken nose, I guess.
Right.
He's just, he's back. He's finally playing well. And then, he's just going for a rebound and somebody slams their hand on his nose.
Yeah.
I mean, now, I don't think it's actually going to be a terrible thing. Like, you think he's going to be out for a week and then he's going to play with a mask,
Again.
But the worst part is their standout rookie, McLean.
Yeah.
He tears a meniscus, and so he's now out indefinitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like it's like a cursed team at this point.
Well, everything that could go wrong did and is continuing to go wrong. I'm with Rube on this. It's time to tear it down. It really is. I think Embiid's time is up. And I mean, shit, I don't know what you get for him, but I mean, it's just time. It's time to tear it down. You're not going to compete this year. It's obvious. And they don't really have an answer at this point. And now you're going to end up meddling in the middle. I mean, if you finish, as a team, they shouldn't be so bad that they finish last in the league.
Right.
So, you're not going to have a shot at the number one pick.
Right.
So what do you do? What do you do? Is pray that they can win and stretch out a 10-game win streak when Embiid is back at full strength? And, where's Rube with his board? He won. Rube, you won. You were right. So, where do you go? I mean, the worst part about this is the last few years, they've kind of been building and building and building. And then all of a sudden you had the Harden issue that off season. And then it's just kind of things have just kind of gone south.
Well, Ben Simmons issue, trading Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. Yeah. When does it end?
Then the Harden issue.
Yeah.
Then Embiid's always injured.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot. But, the bottom line is, look, I mean, there's nothing you can do. I mean, there's just nothing you can do. They're not so bad that they're going to get the number one pick. So if they don't get the number one pick, then there's not a heck of a lot of difference picking 8th versus picking 15th.
Right. Right.
So you might as well try.
Yeah.
And I imagine because, they have the play-in tournament now. So I think it's like actually like 12 teams make the tournament. They'll probably make it. Embiid's only going to be out for another week. And then you still have Embiid, Maxey, and George.
Right.
So they'll probably make it. And, we'll see. You see if they can catch some lightning in a bottle. They probably won't. But but that's what you're left to do.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
Right. Unless you do just decide that you're going to trade Embiid, let's say in the off season, and then just start over, and then it's just a long way to go. Yeah. It's the silence in between your words is deafening, Schwaber. Yeah. It really is. Okay. Page 3, the Flyers playing above 500. Michkov mania. Where's Hockey Jesus when we need him? He's going to have something to say. Yeah, I mean, they've been playing okay lately. They've been kind of doing the win one, lose one.
Right.
They had an interesting game where Scott Lawton on their team had 4 goals,
right?
which is like never happens. But they're just playing okay. So we'll just kind of have to see where it goes. I mean, I think what we're looking at this point is, are they going to try to make some trades to maybe try to make a playoff run, or are they going to sell off some of their pieces to keep building for the future? And I think that's probably what they're going to do.
Right.
Which I don't really have a problem with. But it's more enjoyable hockey. I mean, it's enjoyable to watch Michkov play. And some of the other, young players on the team.
Yeah, his stick work is incredible. I saw those highlights of that where he tried to pass the puck, where he brought the puck up around the back of the net.
Oh yeah, tried to do the
it was
Michigan
amazing.
Goal. Yeah,
it's amazing. I mean, it's just still, it's something that I really think that they've got a budding young superstar in him, and hopefully he stays healthy. And it's not a wasted year. It's definitely not a wasted year, which is something we haven't been able to say about the Flyers in a little while.
Right.
I liked Torts as the coach.
Yeah.
The real question is, looking at his history, is he the guy that as they start to put more pieces in place, because now you're going to build around Michkov.
Right.
So is he the guy that as they start to put pieces in place, is he going to be the guy?
Right.
And that's not really what his pedigree is. He's kind of the guy that comes in and mops everything up and gets everybody into shape, and then he moves on and somebody wins the Stanley Cup. So, but I'm sure he wants to be the guy.
Well, he did win one.
I know.
With Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I know that he has ambitions to be in the front office.
Right.
So I do think if it comes to a time where he's going to take himself out of the role, it'll be when they have somebody that they want and he feels like it's the right time.
Yeah, maybe like Mike Sullivan.
Right.
The other side of the state.
Right.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's won quite a few.
Yeah.
He's won 3, I think, right?
Yeah. Long time ago.
Yeah. True. True.
But that's the thing. I mean, it's interesting when you compare the Flyers and the Penguins. It's like they essentially have the same record or pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Flyers, I think, are a little better record-wise. But it's like 2 teams going in completely opposite directions.
It's like an X. Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
It's like, the Flyers have the young kids who are just going to hopefully keep getting better and better. And the Penguins are just still kind of relying on their old heroes.
Yeah. They're trying to ride it out.
Right.
Ride into the sunset. With what? We're not sure.
Right. But, I mean, to be honest, it's interesting that the Penguins are almost like a comparison to the Sixers in a completely different way, because I know the Sixers never won a championship, but it's like, do you trade your best player and commit to the rebuild?
Yeah, they'll never do that.
They probably won't.
No.
Do you just keep going and you're trying to make that last playoff spot every year?
Hope. Yes.
Hope
is a bad word in sports.
Right. It is.
Bad word.
And then lastly, we've got the Phillies.
Yep. And it's been pretty quiet.
Yeah.
I will say, on the other side of the state, the Pirates have made some trades that are typical Pirates trades. So there is no threat that all eyes will be on Western Pennsylvania baseball next year. They're going to stay on the eastern side of the state with the Phillies.
That is right. Now, I was just scrolling here through X just to see if there was any deals. So, the owners' meetings or the GM meetings, whatever they call it, was last week.
Right.
A lot of big names were moved.
Right.
Phillies were apparently involved in a lot of discussions.
Yeah.
And no moves were made by the Phillies.
Yeah.
Other than getting that reliever.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, on one hand, I do want to improve the nucleus of the team.
Right.
But then on the other hand, I don't want to just give away our best prospects.
Right.
They've got this kid, Andrew Painter.
Yep.
Who is, he was basically Paul Skeens before Paul Skeens existed.
Right.
And then he, got hurt. He was going to start for them last year. Had the Tommy John surgery. He's apparently looking really good. And he's going to be, a starter this coming year.
Right.
So, do you need a pitcher? I don't think so.
Right.
So like, even though that Garrett Crochet is really good, I mean, hey, if I've got my 4, Nola, Wheeler, Suarez, who's the fourth guy? Vasquez.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know.
I'm just losing.
I'm drawing
his
a
name
blank because I'm thinking about Painter.
I'm drawing his name, but yeah, I mean, we don't need a starting pitcher.
Yeah.
And then look, like this kid. Look, we don't know if these things are true or not, but like they say that this Aiden Miller, right, who can basically play left field, or he can play third base, or he can play shortstop. Oh yeah, Sanchez. That's right, Christopher Sanchez.
Right.
They say Aiden Miller is like the best prospect we've had since Mike Schmidt.
Right.
So like, I don't want to get rid of him. And then this Justin Crawford is like one of these 5-tool players who plays center field.
Yeah.
Who's just been tearing it up in the minors.
Right.
I think all 3 of them are like top 50 baseball prospects.
Right.
I don't want to just give those guys away so that we can get like Alex Bregman.
Right.
Who's like a really good player, but his best days are behind him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Let him go to the Pirates someday.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Well, did you see the video that I sent you about the upcoming documentary on Mike Schmidt?
I did see it. Unfortunately,
that's going to be exciting.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to watch it. I don't have the what it's on.
What?
I think it's on MLB.
Is it on MLB?
Yeah, it's on MLB, so I can't watch it.
We don't have MLB on direct. Do you have Direct TV?
Yeah, but I don't. You have to buy it. Like I don't have it.
Oh, well, it'll show up somewhere.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, I at the end of last season, where I stood with the Phillies was that they need a closer, and they're taking a stab at that. Now the guy was injured last year, but they're taking a stab at it, and that's really where their pitching is gonna rest on that. Because if you look at their lineup, it could use some tweaking, and they have some prospects, like you said, coming up. I agree. I mean, the offseason's still here, so some other things could happen. But the
other thing that is kind of
here you go. Rube says, speaking of the best third baseman ever, watch it last night. Pretty good, not great. Anyway. The other thing?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, is like, it seems like for whatever reason, they don't want Alec Boehm back.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Alec Boehm is a little bit annoying in that he makes some great defensive plays, but he also screws some up.
Yes.
And he also is a powder when things aren't going well.
Right.
Okay. But at the same time, like, let's not forget, like, the guy was having a freaking career year last year until he got hit on his wrist by a fastball, and then never really regained his swing after that.
Right.
I mean, like, that's what caused his downfall.
Right.
I mean,
it's really easy to write that stuff off when you're just watching.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I believe he led the league in doubles last year.
Yeah.
He had 100 RBIs, or if it wasn't 100, it was like 98 or something.
Yeah. So what's the problem?
Right. I mean, I don't really get it. I mean, like, there have been times where I've actually felt like Alec Boehm is our best hitter.
Right.
At times.
Yeah.
So, the point is that I wouldn't give him up just for something. Right. I would only give him up for something really good. And the Phillies also sort of walked themselves into a problem, kind of talking about like how they want to move on from Alec Boehm, and the fact that they sat him after he was pouting the first game of the playoffs last year, was kind of stupid. Like, that kind of shows to the rest of the league, like, but like, you don't like him?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now everybody's curious, and so I don't know, man. And like, they also have apparently been shopping Nick Castellanos, who I love Castellanos. I mean, I think Castellanos is like, he's a glue guy. Like, he's like brings the team together. And, even though, he does swing at some crap outside. I mean, the reality is every year the dude hits, 25 to 32 home runs. He's usually hitting like 260 and above, hits a ton of doubles, plays really good outfield, and is the most clutch player on the team, probably outside of Bryce Harper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Why would you want to get rid of him?
Well, let's just say that this is a window that they've been playing in the last 4 years.
Right.
And the window's not going to stay open much longer. And maybe the best thing to do right now is to supplement instead of subtract and see where you end up at the end of this year. I mean, it's tough because really from top to bottom, if you take a step back from 30,000 feet and you look at the league as a whole, the Phillies are one of the definitely in the top 10 teams, probably top 5, easy, even with their lineup where it is right now.
Right.
So it's kind of like, you don't want to mess with the recipe too much. Right. And so maybe a quiet off season is something they need,
maybe
just so they can go into the season.
It's just one of those things where you got to look at it and you got to say like, hey, look, let's not just blow things up just for the sake of it. Right. I mean, like, look at like the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers, I think, had 2 first-round exits before winning it all this year.
Right.
The bottom line is, any of those years they could have won the whole thing.
Yep.
But in baseball, it's tough. You get into a little slump and you lose.
Yep.
So
Freddie Freeman's not going to single-handedly win it for you every year.
Right. Right.
That and final thing about baseball right now is the Juan Soto signing.
Mm-hmm.
Remember what I've always said about where quarterbacks go to die.
That's where players.
I'm predicting right now Juan Soto is going to have one hell of a shitty year.
He might.
He's going to. He doesn't have. Look, as far as I'm concerned, the really bad thing about these signings is, now Ohtani has his World Series. Okay, Soto is going to the Mets. $700 million contracts. Now, look, we know that it's like winning the lotto. Okay, he's not really going to get $700 million. He's going to clear $200 to $300 million though over time, maybe more. And it's a long payout. He's set for life.
Right.
He has nothing to play for. Like, to me, if you were to say to me, this is an interesting question. If you were to say to me or you as a young kid, and there was a point in time in my life where I actually wanted to be a baseball player.
Oh, me too. Everybody did.
If you would have said to me, I'll give you $700 million and you can play baseball as long as you want and be one of the best players, or you can be an average player and win a World Series, what would you take?
I'd take the millions.
I'd take the $700 million all day long.
Yes, of course.
All freaking day long.
And that's it.
You got it. All right. I want to thank you, as usual, for watching the Sports Porch Philadelphia all over the world, live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on X. And, of course, you can catch the podcast right after the show. I drop it right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get
your freaking podcast.
And you can always follow the Sports Porch on YouTube at Philadelphia Sports Porch. That's right. Amy May chimes in. Finally, we know she's watching. Good show, she says. As you can see, Rube was not here. What happened? Did he get his balls cut off? I can't remember. What happened?
That was something a little bit less severe than that. Okay. But, he had some surgery. He's resting up. He's apparently on the road to recovery. Feel better, Rube.
All right. For the Grant Schwabini Rube, I'm your TD. I am out. Jablonski.